Marion County Board of Supervisors for Monday, September 20th, 2021. In order, and have roll call.
Terry Lee,
Here.
Carolyn Bartlett,
Here.
Pam Fall,
Here.
Bill Schradel,
Here.
Gary Taxell,
Here.
Jim Ward,
Here.
Gary Nelson.
Yep.
Punky Mosenting,
Yes.
Pete Olson,
Yes.
Steve Johnson,
Here.
Carol Mullen,
Here.
Eric Skinner,
Here.
Louis Oki,
Here.
Russ Rinzig,
Here.
Todd Gerlin, Jerry McRoberts,
Here.
Marv Thompson,
Present.
Glenn Hansen,
Here.
Stacy Wenzel. Here. Dana Heller,
Here.
Bob Anderson, Stan Buchanan,
Here.
Don Horseman,
Present.
Bill Efforts,
Here.
Bert Skinner,
Yeah, excuse absence. Yep.
Dale Heineke,
Here.
Bob Rogers,
Yeah, excuse absence.
Oscar Scow,
Here.
and John Banks.
Here.
Okay, so we've got 4 absent.
25 and 4 absent.
Call for notification. Wendy Coleman, my executive assistant, has complied with Wisconsin open meeting law requirements. Meeting agendas have been posted on electronic meeting notice boards located on the first and second floor of the Government Center and on the first floor of the Justice Center. A hard copy of the meeting agenda has been posted in the county clerk's office. She has verified the proper posting of this meeting. This is the Barron County Board of Supervisors special meeting scheduled for September 20th, 2021 at 6 p.m. This agenda was posted on September 15th at 11:30 a.m.
Thank you. Item number 2, we Pastor Dave Smith of the Foursquare Church in Barron.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for your goodness. Thank you for your blessing on our nation tonight. As this board meets, I pray that you would be honored and pleased with every decision that's made. May we sincerely ask for your guidance and your insight, I pray, in the strong name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Pastor. Okay, item number 3, special matters and announcements. Jeff doesn't have any. I had some people talk to me ahead of time and ask if there's any mask mandates or lockdowns or any plans or any hidden agenda, and I said, no, there is not. So a lot of them decided not to stay. Okay. Item number 4, approve the agenda. Motion by Supervisor Thompson, second by Supervisor Mosentin. Anybody have any concerns over the agenda? Not all is in favor of approving that, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed by the same sign? That motion is carried. Item number 5, approve the minutes of the September 13th, 2021 meeting. Motion by Supervisor Hanson, seconded by Supervisor Banks. Any concerns with those minutes? Not all is in favor of approval, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed by the same sign? That motion is carried. Public comment. We have a couple of them. David Rule. So just come up to the mic there and state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Is it on? Okay. My name is David Fruit. Sorry for my poor penmanship
Okay.
there. It's not your fault. I'm from Cumberland, live at 1315 Babcock Avenue. My main concern was I was here last month, was my first board meeting last month, found it interesting, some good issues. But I stayed till the end of the meeting and I was surprised that there's nothing on the agenda this month concerning the mask mandates or the procedure for getting the mask mandates installed in the county buildings. Other than that, I have a short comment.
we don't comment on public comment, but if you remember, Supervisor Taxtall did address the group last time on the mask agenda and not having mask mandate, not having it on the agenda. And this time, all we had to do is recommend that masks be worn in the county building. That's all there is for today now. Thank you. Second person, Heidi Weiss. Would you also come up to the podium and state your name and address?
My name is Heidi Wise. I am in Chautauqua, 746 21st Street in Chautauqua. So I have come today because I heard that there was a contact tracer position that had been posted to contact trace COVID cases. And I wanted to come here to express my displeasure and strong desire to not see one red cent of tax dollars go to any more COVID nonsense. I have been, it's been suggested that this was somehow a required position from the state, and I would say push back on that. You do not work for the state, you work for us, you work for the county. We can make decisions not to take state money. And if you feel like, well, we're gonna lose out on other state money, then I would suggest that perhaps maybe we abolish the Department of Health as a way to gain some funding. Because I personally believe that all of the decisions over the last 18 months from the Department of Health have created more division, more destruction, and more death than anything else that we've ever seen. We need to stop this, and we don't need to continue to fund failure. So I want to just challenge the assertion. The state will try to make it sound like it's required. They will use just the right language that leads you to fill in the blanks with an assumption that there's nothing you can do. This is exactly what happened with the unlawful state mask mandate that we all know was struck down legally. And I want to remind you, as county supervisors, you took an oath to uphold the law and the Constitution so that you can effectively represent your constituents, not the state. So if you do not know the law or the Constitution, you have an obligation to ask as many questions as necessary to learn it. I also challenge the assertion that we are in a state of emergency with our hospitals. If we are short-staffed, I propose that we are there because of the collusion of the Department of Health with the hospitals to create that shortage. 3 key things likely led to this. Mask mandates, mandatory masks, mandatory quarantine of healthy people, and mandatory jabs of an experimental type. So when you create an environment where people literally do not want to work, and I'm telling you, if I have options, I'm not working anywhere that requires a mask or a quarantine or a jab. So now the hospital administrators who are paid a lot of money turn to us and say, you solve our problem. No, there's no emergency. They're paid well to be able to manage in situations like this, and that's what I expect them to do. No contact tracers. Thank you very much.
Okay. Item number 7, presentation on internal wage compression of long-term employees. Victoria McGrath, McGrath Human Resources Group, and Rachel Ritchie, our Human Resources Director. Victoria?
Hello, welcome again. Sitting here in the corner. So I'm going to go through a brief presentation about what's going on in the way of the compensation system and in the way of the compression analysis. So hopefully this works. There it is. Okay, so just in case anybody doesn't remember me, I am Dr. Victoria McGrath. I'm CEO of McGrath Human Resources Group. We're the group that have been working with you since 2017 on your compensation plan. Our business has been in existence for 21 years. We celebrated our 21st anniversary this year. It's kind of hard to believe that we've been around that long. We have 2 sides to the business, human resource consulting and public safety consulting. So I'm gonna walk a little bit down memory lane because for some of you, you wouldn't understand when you get to be as old as I am. You don't remember everything that happened in years past. But just to let you know, back in 2017, we did a compensation study for the county. We basically, at that point in time, developed a compensation philosophy where we wanted to continue to attract, retain, and motivate employees. And this current environment that's becoming more and more challenging with the labor force that is becoming non-existent. So what we did during that time period is we developed a compensation plan. And we're not going to be talking about the plan so much other than when we created that plan and implemented that plan, obviously it caused some issues that we need to begin to address. A compensation plan is basically this. It is basically the hierarchy of positions within your organization. And because there's a minimum and a maximum salary range, even though you have steps, there's a step 1, there's a step 16, that's how much we are going to pay for that type of position. That whole entire study was developed looking with external market data, as well as analyzing positions within the county and comparing them across the county internally as well. The compensation system we have right now is actually working very well. Rachel has done a very good job of keeping up with it since we implemented it back in 2017. But we're having a little bit of a problem with when we implemented it. This is what your compensation system looked like. I know it's very small writing, but it's basically there are pay grades. Each pay grade has 16 steps to it. And at the time of the study, step 1 was very competitive with the external market starting salary of positions. In the middle is the market rate. And according to Rachel, right now, she's still not having any issues, at least with the salary schedule, in hiring and placing folks. However, what happens when we put the step system together back in 2017 is that the county's money tree did not start blooming in the backyard. And so far we had some limitations as to how we placed people on that schedule. And what we do when we are creating or looking at a step schedule is we place people on the step closest to what they're currently making without a pay decrease. So I could be here for 2 years, I could be here for 20 years, and I might be placed on step 3 because my salary is closest to what step 3 is. So the first thing we did, for example, for the example that we have up there, if I'm making $18 and I'm in this pay range, step 1 is $22.13, I'm going to be placed on step 1. Again, irrespective of how long I've been here within the organization. If I'm making $23.20, I'm going to be placed on step 3, etc. Some people got maybe a penny because if I was making $25.40 and I'm going to now be placed on step 7, which is $25.41, I got a whole penny. But again, it was just to place people on that schedule. Then what happens is since that time in 2018 and 19, you have maintained the schedule. So January 1st, the schedule increases, it goes up by a certain amount. And then on July, based upon my performance, if I have acceptable performance, I'm moving to the next step. So if I started in 2017-18 on step 1, I'm probably on about step 3 at this point in time. So here's where the problem happens, is because you do not have enough money to put people on a step closest to where their years in position are, we've created a bottleneck. And so you have all these people that are at the lower end of the salary schedule, and they're not moving very quickly because they only move a step a year. And so therefore you have this wonderful salary range that you can use to hire people with. But obviously you don't want to hire people more than what your current workforce is making. So in the example here, we have a 20-year employee who's on step 6, and Rachel has already had some people turn down offers of employment because she can't hire than step 6 because of where your current employee workforce is. This is not a negative against the county. When we have step systems, this is how we have to place those folks on the schedule because it's extremely costly to turn around and try to place everybody on a step closest to their years in position. Whatever we spent back in 2017-18 would have almost been tripled if you could have fixed the problem right at the beginning. So one of the things that we recommend to organizations that have this issue is we need to then start clearing those lanes. We need to start moving people with longer tenure within the organization. This is another example. In one of your departments, everybody was placed on step 1, regardless of where they are. So at this point in time, you only have 2 steps in which to use, in which to attract and hire individuals within the organization. So again, compression, in-range compression is what this is called, is very common when you look at implementing and updating a compensation system. And then what we've done is basically said, let's put some methodology in place where we can kind of push those longer tenured employees into the salary range where they should belong, and therefore free up those lanes to be able to use to hire and attract individuals. One of the reasons you want to do this is because of turnover. And Rachel was kind enough to provide some data. You're getting some significant amount of turnover. Now, some of it's probably, I did not analyze why people turned over, and you've got a lot of folks that were on the higher end and looking at retirement. But you're looking anywhere between 11 to 22% turnover rates, which is getting to be a little bit high when it comes to government. Again, some of it could be retirements, some of it could be from the fact that people are accepting, as these are, accepting better offers elsewhere because we're not moving through that salary schedule. And the reason why turnover is important, because turnover is costly. Some turnover is great. We always want to have some manageable turnover. You want to bring in new ideas. But if you have too much turnover, then you have to start looking at what the cost to the organization. Most HR professionals look at 1.5 to 2 times a person's salary as the cost for turnover, because you're looking at advertising, downtime, overtime to cover the position when it's not there, training time by the time they get up to speed. And Rachel calculated that within Barron County, we're looking at close to $81,000 to $108,000 per hire in turnover costs. Or basically for 50 positions in 2020, you're talking about around $4 to $5 million that have been eaten up in turnover data. The other thing we have right now, and I'm sure we've all experienced in one way, shape, or form, is we have a shrinking workforce. Right now, between 2013 and 2018, the number of government jobs have increased by 29%. However, we are having a shortage of at least 8%, causing a gap in those people that are qualified and capable to do the job who now want to work for government. Government has a little bit of a stigma to it, and so people are actually being able to find a lot of very high-paying jobs that may not necessarily be, you need a lot of experience for it, but there's a lot of openings right now. In case you haven't walked around, I mean, even where I am, $12, $15 an hour to work at McDonald's. We were just recently in Tennessee, and most of the fast food restaurants' lobbies were closed, not because of COVID or anything like that. They just don't have enough help that's going to want to support that. So because of this, you want to make sure that those entry lanes within your salary schedule become free, that you can start making those salaries attractive to those folks that you want to have. And so what Rachel has put together, and with my support, is basically a program where it says, look, if you've got 15 or more years within this organization, we're going to move you 2 steps in January, and then we're going to move you another step in July. And that's now moving 3 steps into that system and getting that folks, clearing those lanes out. If you've got 10 years or more, you're getting 1 step and 1 step. And there has been a little bit of a caveat to that, because obviously we'd love to do it so that we could move even further in the range. But we're basically saying you need to get to at least 50% of where you should be at this point in time. So this process doesn't even get you to the full amount, to the minimum scale. But yet it's a reasonable amount to clear out those lanes. And so here's just an example. So if I was that 20-year employee on step 6, I moved to step 7 and 8 in January. I moved to step 9 in July. And now I have 8 more steps that I can use to attract folks. Okay, so the recommendation is to use the plan that Rachel has developed. It's come in at a cost that both Rachel and Jeff feel very comfortable with. It's going to solve the vast preponderance of the problem of moving those folks through that salary range and getting that range available. Now, with that being said, there's always gonna be some minor adjustments that might happen. You might have somebody that kind of gets stalled, or you might need to bring somebody in sooner, but it should not be as big of an issue as you're dealing with right now. So, I'm done talking now. Questions? Clear as mud? Yes, sir.
Very so.
Yeah,
Don,
Yeah.
Am
Yeah.
I correct in assuming that if you started everything and hired everybody all on the same day, this would have worked perfectly, but that's just the ramifications of the fact that that's never the case, so.
That's correct. You're right. If you hired everybody at the same time, then you wouldn't have to worry because everybody would be progressing through it. But obviously, if I'm in a department and I have 20 years of experience and I'm sitting on step 5 next to somebody who just got hired because we had to bring them a little bit higher in the range, who's been here for 2 years and they're on step 4.
Feelings are a little bit hurt.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Gary?
Yeah, I going back to that estimate cost of $81,000, $108,000 per hiree for a turnover. That is totally way out of line as far as I'm concerned. When I was working, the cost was $2,000 to $3,000 to hire someone. I guess I'd like to see a breakdown of that $81,000 to $108,000 to hire somebody. That's an unrealistic number it would cost us $4 to $5 million annually. I don't think we've seen that in any budget. So I really have to take a hard look at those numbers. I'm in favor of doing the adjustments, but I really don't believe that cost to hire someone. That's all I have.
Sorry, Rachel, you want to address that now or later?
Go ahead,
Okay. I obviously I didn't do the math. Those are Rachel's numbers. I don't think they're out of line because when we look at 1 to 2 times the cost of what salaries are now, and plus looking at, especially if you have turnover in public safety types of positions, it's even more than that. So obviously I can't tell you what the breakdown was. I did not see it to be unrealistic when I looked at the numbers that she gave me. It didn't pop out and say, oh my God, what are you doing? You're not going to see that on a budget because what's happening, you've got vacancies, and then you're going to see it in other areas where there's turnover costs, your training costs, and things of that nature. So I think the message should be is that turnover costs money, and if you can find a way to make sure you're retaining good employees, that's what you need to look at. And this is an opportunity to look at retaining, your professional staff.
And as far as the math goes, we normally use just an average of what, an average across the board of what county employees might make. So that's tended to be $26 per hour. So that was kind of the 1.5 times or 2 times if that were the case for the cost of it. And again, you go from the point of, when we get a vacancy, the recruitment time, the interview time, the posting time, the onboarding time, takes them, the new employee, maybe some positions it takes, 2 years for that training curve to really be done. Not all positions, but, to kind of go through that full cycle. That's why the statistic is out there that way. Again, it's not a check that we write for 81,000 or, 108 out the window, but when you take a cumulative look at what that, when person A leaves to when person B is really truly fully functional, it can be a long road.
And Gary didn't have
get all that money.
I'm sorry. I don't believe the numbers. I just don't. It just that would be totally unaffordable, and I just can't believe those numbers. Period. Because back in the day, it sure wasn't more than the salary of what it cost to hire somebody.
But like Gary indicated, he's not, he agrees with what we're doing in adjustment, just takes it, with the number that's there. But, in today's environment, as everybody knows, it's hard to hire people. And if we don't have people in those positions, we aren't going to provide the services that our county residents need. So, any other questions? Go ahead.
I definitely believe in this because You know, I used to work in many years, and the new girls came in and they were making as much as I was, and I'd already been there 15 or 20 years. You know what I mean? You started at 4 and you finally got to 8. That's a few years back. But you have to have trained people. That's the problem. And if they're gonna come in here and they're gonna say, you wanna pay me this much? Forget it. I'd rather go on help. Because they are not going to work. You know, and I was surprised, I don't know if this is what you think, but I heard that the young people want the money and not the benefits, which I cannot understand in my whole life, but then they go to the doctor, we pay for them anyways, even though they're making 57,000 or whatever. No, I think it's right to move that up so that, you know, I can't imagine sitting here for 5 years and 10 years and I'm still at number 2. That's ridiculous. And other places are looking. We train well, aren't they? And when if we lose one, it's for a reason.
Yeah, you know, the labor market right now is just so competitive, and you know, I wish I had a crystal ball and knew what was going to happen with it. My crystal ball in the past year got really cloudy. I just know that, you know, you need to do what you need to do in order to get qualified people here, but also, you know, you need to make sure that you put programs and things in place to retain the workforce that you have, because you've got a very good professional workforce here, and you don't really want to lose them.
Steve, question?
I heard a comment in your presentation about Administrator French and satisfied with the cost of, the estimated cost, Rachel, of implementing this thing. I'm not opposed to it, but about how much money are we talking about here, approximately?
It's about 170,000, 175,000 with benefits, including like WRS.
That includes the back?
Mhm.
That's the first year?
Yeah. And, you know, the comfort level is we have placed $250,000 as, you know, an earmark for in the budget. The initial calculation, you know, to really 100% fix the problem. So to get a person who's been in their position at 10 years, really to step 10 is too big. You know, we've done that calculation.
600,000 or 700,000.
Yeah. Louis fell out of his chair. We all, you know, so we know what that potentially would look like, and we understand that that's not attainable. You know, again, if we could, sure, great, but we understand that that's not going to be realistic. So we've done a few proposals and conversations with executive, and this one, you know, impacts and makes movement of about just over 60 employees. I think it's 61 employees, and as we look at it. In the future, you know, we think it takes care of the bigger problem and would be, you know, a good starting point and probably a good point that would address the issue that we're seeing.
170,000 the first year, and for those employees that would be getting that second bump, like for next year, is there an estimate on that?
Do you mean the July bump, or when we talked about the 15-year person?
The bump comes in 6 months?
Yeah, there's a cost of living in January, then they get a step up in July.
Okay.
And that's our standard practice, you know, has been since we implemented it.
And that cost is very predictable because everybody's on the step. So it depends upon how much you're gonna put money on the step schedule for next year, which you've been doing every year. So that January 1, if I'm on step 1, that's gonna increase by 1.5%, 2%. Right now, I've got clients that are putting 2 to 3% on their salary schedules. I'm saying be conservative and, you know, do 2 to 3, don't go more than 3. I have one client in the state of Washington, and against my recommendation, they put 6% on their salary schedule for next year, because that's what, plus their steps. So, because the state of Washington has inflation of close to 6.3%. So you will put money on the schedule for next year, 2 or 3%, then move in January. That's very predictable. All those numbers are calculated because the steps are a certain percentage, the amount is a certain percentage, so it won't vary.
Gary's got another question, but before I want somebody else, before he gets the second one, anybody else have a first question? Again, as Steve was mentioning, when you've got your budget, where it has a contingency fund. If you look under wage adjustments, that's this internal compression, that's at 250,000. And then under COLA, which is, what they're figuring the cost of living for that is 1.5%. But they've got to figure it out. Bill?
Well, I got a couple of things here. Like, first of all, Rachel, it's gonna be like 100, and you don't know, I know that, but 70, 80,000 every year, so we can kind of get these people caught up by the number of years or 10 years, so we can retain them, so we don't have to worry about losing so many people. Is that a big deal there, obviously? Okay. So then, we're gonna try and get these people caught up, but that's gonna take a while, because like, ma'am, you said that you can't give them 6% to bump right up to maybe where they should be, but we still gotta give them something to make sure that they wanna work here and do their jobs properly.
This is a really kind of a one-time fix. So it is fixing the problem right now. I should say fixing it. It's putting moving people further than they are now on it. I don't know if you really need to go another year and do this again. You might have one or two people that you might have to look at, but I think what has been put in place here is really a one-time, get people on those steps. It clears out enough lanes to allow you to effectively hire. I think you can look at it again next year, but I think the way the plan has been put together, I don't think you'll have to do such a big number again. You might have a couple here and there that you might have to evaluate each year, and that's gonna happen depending upon what the market does. So that's pretty usual, but I think this is a one-time thing that you need to look at. And in fact, you're kind of fortunate because there's some organizations that'll take 2-3 years of doing this in order to get that compression put together, and I think you're able to pretty much solve a good chunk of the problem in year one.
But it is hard to tell what's gonna happen in the future, and Rachel and Jody and Jeff, I'm sure will evaluate it next year and see what the budget allows.
Oh, I see this, I agree with Gary's comments. This is a one and done kind of thing. This really gets us to the step plan that we should have been back in 2018. We couldn't afford it. This is the step number 2, and I've explained this to you, and I'll explain it again today. I see this as this is going to be the biggest, largest problem solver. I don't see us doing anything until 2025 or 2026, and then probably a full compensation study again, because the question becomes: is this a bubble on this huge jump in wages? Or is it the real deal?
Yeah.
And if it's a bubble, then we don't do anything. But if it's the real deal, you may have to reassess it.
Yeah, I think you're gonna have to watch the bubble because I just don't know where it's gonna go. I think next year we'll have a better idea if this is a blip or if you need to start, and not just you, everyone's gonna have to start looking at their compensation schedules and saying, what do we need to do to keep it up with what's going on in the way of inflation? But it's too early, in my opinion, to panic and say you need to do a lot. But I agree. I think this is a one and done. I really don't think you need to do it again. Clears out those lanes very nicely. Again, you might have 1 or 2 positions here or there that you might have to look at because something happens with the market and is causing you to hire higher in the salary range. But that's going to be a market condition that's going to happen, not to fix the implementation strategy.
Okay, before I get to Gary's second question, does anybody else have a question? Gary, go ahead.
Based on today's salaries, what people are getting paid, the increase where they should be is $175,000, and that is a built-in amount every year. The other question I do, and I'm in favor of doing this, don't get me wrong. The other question I have is the comparables. Most governmental units do the comparables to other governmental units because they don't do the private sector because the governmental units have a benefit package so much more, especially the pension side, that they're not comparable to the private sector. So when you did the comparables on these salaries, did you just do the other county comparables or did you include the private sector?
Well, we did the market comparison back in 2017. So this didn't include a market comparison up to date other than my asking, Rachel, are you having problems with the current salary schedule and hiring? And the only issue she's having is where she's bumping into people, not the salary schedules itself. So I'm trying to remember back in 2017, I think we did just use county comparables. I think, and I could be wrong, So if I am wrong, I will, whatever my report says, I don't think we looked at some of the privates for some of the things you compete with on the private side. But it, you know, obviously, as you just very clearly articulated, you've got to be careful when you're comparing with the privates because their salary benefit mix is very different than government. But again, I have to go back to my report to honestly tell you what I did back in 2017.
Any further questions? John?
Movement from one step to the next is based just on longevity in the county.
It's based on, well, technically longevity, but also you have to have acceptable performance. So if your performance is, you know, not in line, you're on a performance improvement plan, that step could be withheld until such time. But it's not necessarily just breathing pay is what I call it.
Where does licensure and recertification or advanced degrees in their field? I mean,
Yeah, it was in the original study, but
Yeah.
that can be the issue because those always didn't get taken into account and they got put on the narrow step that they were on. So that's some of the issues that's creating this compression and turnover.
And that's a very good question. When we do look at the external market, we're trying to compare positions that have similar types of experiences. So if I'm looking at a social worker, are we looking at bachelor's degree social workers? Are we looking at degree social workers that all have the certifications? Is a master's degree required? Because some of the social workers, depending upon what they do, a master's degree would be required. So we gathered all that information back when we did the initial study so that those salary ranges are reflective of those types of skills and education that's required for the position.
but
Any
nothing
further
taken
questions?
into consideration if they advance themselves.
It depends upon the thing. First of all, you had a pay for performance system before and basically determined that A, it's not working. Part of the problems with pay for performance systems is that you need to have money. Because if I'm gonna reward somebody for doing more things versus somebody who's doing what they're supposed to be doing, and that is in such a small minuscule amount, people kind of look and say, well, all right, I get 2% for doing my job and I get 3% for being a superstar, and that difference, my saying is the difference is a quarter, and let's take that and divide it by 26 and be really motivated. So, which is why we moved to the full step system. However, there are some positions where there are levels, so that if I get whatever's required for the next level, now since I'm picking on social workers, if I'm a social worker 1, which I'm a bachelor's degree, not licensed, I can start at this pay grade, and once I get my license and can do these things, I can move to the next pay grade. If I get a master's degree, I can move to the next pay grade. So we created those where it was feasible to do.
Any further questions?
I have one for Brent. Is the latest Saputo ad gonna hurt you guys?
I'm not sure if it will or not. We are seeing this exact same thing that we're seeing across county line. This would potentially, the wage compression thing affects, I think it's 5 or 6 people, 4 or 5 or 6, don't quote me on that, Rachel knows, in waste energy directly. And I think this would be a great thing. I mean, waste energy is one of those fields that are few and far between, and we need talented staff. I mean, and it's hard to get talented staff unless you pay them. I mean, and what you said earlier, you're right. Some of the people we have coming in don't care about the benefits, and that is one of the plus sides of government, where, you know, it's almost like magic wand would say, okay, we're not going to give you the benefits, and we'll pay you more, but that's not the case. So this is a big concern for waste energy also.
Well, I know one thing that in order to retain talented people in some of these fields, and I don't even know all the fields unless I look at Rachel and Jeff, I'm sure, but our son used to be the maintenance superintendent for a big factory. And when the manufacturer came back a few years ago, I mean, it was so competitive, he could have left several times. A couple of guys he knew in light positions left and had 3-4 job offers. So, you know, just like those 2 gentlemen out there from Waste Energy, you know, we can't go out and get 2 guys like that. So we got to compensate them, and we all understand that. But, and I'm sure there's a lot of people in the county, meaning under Rachel and under some of the other groups, are the same way. So we don't probably like it, but we don't have a choice, you know? So that's my comment.
Any further questions? Thank you, Victoria and
Thank you.
Rachel. Great job. Unless you want.
The only other thing I would just point out would be, that savings piece that, we do have times where, when we do have turnover, we may have had a 20-year employee and now we are hiring, a newer person or, a new employee that doesn't have that same level of experience. And we are, having savings that occur. Now, sometimes we might have to hire at the same level. Pretty rare are we going above, but a lot of times, we do have savings that we're incurring because we are not rehiring just cookie cutter, whatever that prior employee was making. So there are some savings with that as well.
Thanks. Okay, on to the next item, item number 8, zoning ordinance amendment, rezoning town of Sioux Creek, Paul and Lorena Bird. Need a motion to approve that, the rezoning. Motion by Russ, second by Dale. Anybody have any concerns or questions on that? All right, all those in favor of passing that zoning amendment, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed by the same sign, and motion's carried. Item number 9, update on the new highway facilities project. Any work?
Good evening. So, I guess from a big perspective, the last real piece of the construction project, the co-op transport building and moving that building, we signed the contract last week for the foundation work for that. We already had the contract in place for the building move, so that's going to get started. A reminder to everybody, our next facility committee meeting is going to be October 12th at 9 a.m. over at the highway office. If you're interested, certainly attend. And just another reminder, if you have interest in seeing the site, get a hold of me and I can get you the proper PPE and we can drive around or walk around the site. You can see what's going on. There's an awful lot going on right now. We're working on both sides of the road and above ground and below ground and everything else. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our construction manager, CBS Square, Chad and Zach are here to discuss progress on the facility and what our long-term schedule looks like.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. All right, as you can see, Jody, can you restart that first slide? Actually, let's go to the third one. There you go, right there.
Right here?
Pause.
Right here? Or you want to go back?
West, or right there, pause that one.
Okay.
As you can see there, we have the precast for the wash bay erected. The internal plumbing, mechanical, and HVAC underground is installed. They have poured the floors in there. We are currently working on, today, the roofer showed up and adhered to the vapor membrane before the rain came. So we got the membrane down. This week, they'll start laying the insulation out and getting the actual TPO roofing put on there. The slab that you see to the north of there, that's UH1 or the ARDC building. That building is currently about 80% stood now. We got structural steel erected last Thursday, Friday, and today. They're detailing it out right now, making sure all the wall connections are tight and good and squaring the building out. By the end of the week, they want to start insulating and putting side steel on that building. Moving through the pond, Erickson has established the new pond and all of the site. Utilities have been in place, sanitary, water, and sewer on the west side. As you can see, all the gray stuff that's sitting around, that is all the structural bar joists. We took and received our order for structural bar joists because if we didn't take it when we took it a couple weeks ago, we wouldn't have seen it until late this year. So
Explain to them what the structural bar joists are.
Okay. Structural bar joists are for the main facility on the east side of the site. That piece is actually what holds the roof up. So those bar joists actually connect to the structural columns and the sidewalls of the precast. And then they lay the steel structural deck over the top of it to create a diaphragm to tie the whole building together so it doesn't rest. And then your insulation and foam go over the top of that with rubber roofing. Creates your weather-tight seal on the building. Jody, if you can fast forward to the other side. There you go. Now you can pause that one. On the east side of the site, Eric Eckert has demoed the archway. We have completed the asbestos abatement on that. Everything you see that's exposed to the east side of the Dutch dome there, yep, that has all come down now. Only thing standing as of tonight was a few of the concrete piers that used to hold the arches up. Kind of a little side note, most of the arches, when we went to go grab them with the picker, the hole, pretty much were so dry and brittle they fell apart. They were going to try to salvage some of the arches and some of the lumber because it was full cut 2x12s, and beams were 6 inches wide by 24 inches, laminated column. We tried salvaging as much as we could, but most of it was so dry and rotten that it pretty much fell apart when they grabbed a hole. Just kind of giving you an idea that you were due for a new building. But Erickson's out there, or they were out there right before the rains, starting to crumple up all those structural concrete columns and the foundation around the building. So we can start ripping out the concrete floors and they can start cutting into grade. Down the center line there, you see some deep, big square boxes. Those are the column pads for the bridge crane. There'll be a duplicate set to the south that will get poured here in the next few weeks. But they are currently, this photo is about 2 weeks old. We tried to get a photo on Friday, but it was cloudy and overcast, and it didn't turn out so well. But they will duplicate those deep columns to the south side, and then there's a shallow strip footing that holds up the precast wall on the back side of the column pads that you see down the center. They're currently backfilling, and this week, well, after this rain that we got tonight, Erickson does a very good job of rolling the site tight, what we call rolling the site tight. So the water sheds off of it and people can start working right away in the morning. You know, we'll get about 1 inch or 3 inches of kind of gooey, sloppy mess on top. But for the most part, we can get back to work right the next day when we have rainfall. GNS Contractors is also working on the north footing line, getting in the strip footing that's buried 4 foot deep that'll hold the precast structure. Erickson has everything from the salt shed to the back completed as far as cut to grade, and they have the storm installed there. This week they're going to start on water main and sewer to the new buildings, the sanitary sewer and water main. Storm sewer has been connections. They have completed. If you can hit play, and then if you want to pause it there.
Sorry.
That's right.
Okay.
You can see that large hole in the background there. That's when they were digging the pond on the backside of the property between Barron County Header Shop and the trailer park. There's a large pond that runs north to south there. Erickson has that all completed now, and that receives majority of the site on the west side goes to that pond. The remaining portion out in front goes through inlets and out to the creek. Everything ends up in the creek, but it's all treated, and what we call TSS, total suspended solids, is reduced to 40% for the use of site. We are working, when we pulled the DNR permit, it was flagged by DAGCAP, which is, they control all the pesticides, fuels, and all that kind of toxic chemicals. The old red building used to have a fertilizer storage tank outside, big concrete bunker out back, and they used to mix the fertilizers inside the building. Well, back in the day, at some point there was a leak, and DAGCAP was aware of it. DAGCAP flagged the site, so we did 12 borings last week, at 2 footing poles. So there's quite a few borings that we've done last week. We're supposed to have results back on Wednesday of this week to either correct that area if there's nitrates that show up or ammonia that shows up in that soil that we're testing. We'll have soil correct that area. If not, we'll cap it with that pile of clean sand that's off to the right, kind of by the culvert storage area. Yep, right in there. There's a pile of clean sand that will cap that hole, and then we can proceed with starting to dig the footings for UH2 building, which is your large unheated storage building. So we got lots of things going on and lots of moving parts, but we were informed a few weeks ago that with the delay of the National Registry and putting us out approximately 90 days, we lost our position in the precast. So last week we had a meeting with the Highway Steering Committee and the owner of Huffcut. Huffcut explained with the delays that it pushed our schedule out, and he had to fill his schedule back in to keep his plant running and his production up, which is understandable. He has to keep his business going, and especially when we didn't have firm dates from Triple of when we could start or when we could proceed with demolition. So that pushed us out. Worst case scenario, he gave us a worst case scenario timeline. Worst case scenario, he goes into production for the main facility December 13th. And he'll start erecting on the 24th of January and be completed by the end of March with setting all the structural precast. So that's pretty much every wall that's on the exterior of that building. It's a bad deal, but we have also learned here in the last couple of days that there's other delays in production. We ordered roof insulation back in May, and we're not getting that until November now. Roof fasteners, about approximately 40,000 pieces. All the screws that go through the metal deck and through the insulation that hold the insulation in place. We can't get those until January now. They were ordered in May. Garage doors, we ordered in May. They're shipping mid-January for the whole site. And then we were just talking with the local city electric. Transformers for the main building that were ordered way early in the project, towards April, look to be shipping in November, first part of December. So with the COVID project, problems, everything's manufacturing has been slowing down quite a bit, and things are starting to reflect that. We've been meeting with project managers now, weekly basis, and construction performance, find out and make sure that there's no other items that we haven't been notified about. But yeah, we have taken as much material as possible. We're having granite from the city, the field to the north. You can pause that one. The field to the north, the nice green field off the left, where the new city shop's going. Liz has allowed us to put all of our merchandise over there that we requested. We're telling the contractors, keep shipping. We don't want you to hold it, cut off any orders, just keep shipping. We'll store it in that green field until it's needed. So that is off-site and out of the way of Erickson, precasters, steel erectors, everybody. That keeps everything secured over there. As soon as we get a few more products in, there's currently roof insulation, a little bit of roof insulation, all the underfloor slab insulation. There's quite a bit of rebar over there now. We're gonna fence that in with temporary fence to keep it secure, so parts and pieces don't come missing. I'll let Zach touch on the kind of 4-week schedule. Oh, go ahead.
So, on your precast there for your main building, how deep are the frost?
The top of the footing is at 4 foot for the exterior wall. There, we do have some interior, the main column line that runs on the backside of them big box piers.
Yeah.
That is 1 foot below grade, finished floor. But the majority of the exterior precast is all 4 foot. There's a couple spots where we have step footing that steps down to about 7 or 8.
You gotta be safe on that in this country.
Yep.
But every retention pond I've seen is full of cattails. Do you want it that way, or does it just happen?
Dina would love to have it full of cattails. Most everybody, with the depth of it, new standards is 4 foot in the wet pond. It kind of helps prevent the cattails from growing up in the whole thing. The new wet ponds are clay lined. They have a 2 foot clay liner in them. And that helps retain the water, clean it. Because on the top of a wet pond, there's what we call an orifice, an overflow. Once it gets to a clean state and the oils separate from the water, it flows through the orifice and into what we call a dry pond. And then the dry pond basically dry pond is sand, manure, and a few other compost items. And that finishes the cleaning of the soil or the water. And it gets either absorbed into the ground if it's clean enough, or once it builds up to a certain level, it overflows through the south end or the east end to the north to the creek and flows through that grass. And the remaining solids or suspended solids get picked up at that point.
And manure is a filtering agent?
Yep. It's mixed with sand and nitric.
That's not.
Maybe a little free stuff
From
from this room.
Zach? We got 4 minutes till we got the public hearing.
All right, I'll make it quick here. Chad covered most of what I was gonna talk about anyways, but, so as you kind of determined, with the precast being shifted back so far, we've had to shuffle quite a bit on this site. And what you see here, of course, is a week or two old, so quite a bit has already changed. And a lot more is going to change here very quickly. So we're still gonna concentrate on the main facility over these next couple weeks to get those, all the bridge crane footings in. Of course, those are my deepest ones. I need to get those in before my strip footings go in. But then once we get far enough ahead on the main facility, we're actually gonna transition over to UH2, where Chad had talked about that DNR issues over there. Hopefully I'll have a resolution on that by Wednesday this week, and if not, if we got good news, I'll have it all taken care of by Friday. And then we'll have a nice building pad to start working on there. And then we're still expecting about mid-October to have the federated building out of the way for us, and then we can actually finish up the UH2 building over there too. The whole purpose, of course, is to get a storage building up this winter time, since I'm not going to have my main precast facility erected yet. We're trying to get as many facilities finished as possible to give us some dry space to store stuff over the winter time, which includes UH1, UH2, and then also possibly the wash bay as well. So mainly over the next 4 weeks, we're really gonna be concentrating on this east side of the road. I'll still have some stuff going on the west side with UH1. And I do have actually wash bay equipment showing up here at the end of September, beginning of October. So we're starting to get some of our automated systems showing up here as well. But we're really gonna concentrate on this east side, trying to get the main facility going. And actually getting a head start hopefully on UH2 so we can have some dry space to store stuff over the winter time. It's not much, but that's our 4-week look ahead schedule at this point.
Do we have any questions? Okay, thanks, guys. Keep up the good work. It's 6:58. You wanna go and
So,
you gotta wait on 10 until after our public hearing.
So just Supervisor Mona's online, but probably a month ago, she really brought up 2 very interesting questions. She said, why can't we go into a closed session for building safety as we did with the property committee in July or August? And then she asked about IT security, so I asked Mr. Mention, asked the Wisconsin Counties Association, and we can actually go into a closed session for those reasons, but it's a very, very narrow exception in the law, and we have to work with Mr. Mention, WCA, to do that. So just an update on that. On the PFAS testing, when I send out my update, I want you to know that what I meant to say was, in the state budget, there's been $23,000 allocated 2 years in a row. We've included that with the budget. It was approved by LCC Extension, and that's been put in the budget. If the budget passes and the PFAS testing of the 108 or whatever, 110 private well systems that Tyler would like to test, we'll take that out of our ARPA money when that time comes, because ARPA clearly allows water testing to be done, whether it's municipal or private. So we'll do that. But I just wanted to clarify what I meant to say was, It's in the budget for the operating budget as part of the grants that go through LCC extension. I don't have any appointments, so that's what happens.
All right, it's 12, no appointments, 13 claims, no claims, petitions, or correspondence. Okay. I will take a 30-second recess until our public hearing, and then we'll come back to our main meeting, take up item number 10. Do we have to do a motion to recess?
Okay, I've got a motion and a second.
Motion by Supervisor Buchanan, seconded by Supervisor Nelson to recess the county board meeting and to have the public hearing. Any questions? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed by the same sign. Okay, we're in recess, and it's 7 o'clock, so we'll call a public hearing for presentation of redistricting plan in order, and we'll have a presentation of the plan by Ron Dzukas. Rhonda?
Hello.
You got
Me
it-
again.
You got it memorized now?
Yeah, you guys will have it memorized before too long. All right. So, all right. So I'd like to start out reviewing, and I apologize, it's a repeat, but we need to do this for the public to make sure everybody understands what this is about. I'd like to start out reviewing the total population counts from the data we received from the census. These are located on a spreadsheet in the packet materials, and Jody has kindly brought this up for us. This shows a new county population of 46,711, which is an increase from our 2010 population of 45,870. However, the numbers are showing that 15 municipalities lost population during this decade. These are shown in red. Municipalities with a population greater than 1,000 are required to create wards, and these are highlighted in green. On August 16th, the first day it was available, the state uploaded the census data to WiseLR, which is the mapping program that we use, and I immediately began work on this project. The first step was to determine how well our current supervisory district plan fit into the ideal population required by the new figures. With our 29 districts, the ideal population per district is 1610. A plus or minus 5% deviation from this number is allowable. The percent deviation from the ideal population count of our current district boundaries is illustrated on the green and pink maps in the packet. We included a detailed map of the city of Rice Lake. Only 14 districts met the deviation criteria, with the deviation range of less than 1 to over 22%. I then set to work creating option A, which strived to maintain as many of the current district boundaries as possible while still working within the statutory redistricting requirements. Maps, a spreadsheet, and notes are included in the packet for option A. With this, 14 of the existing district boundaries remain intact. However, it does leave 9 districts above a 4% deviation percentage, which is not ideal since only 5% is allowable. Unfortunately, it was necessary to divide several previously intact municipalities in order to retain existing conforming districts. For example, District 2 required more population, and the only way to add additional population without affecting Districts 1 and 4, which were conforming, was to divide the town of Dallas. There are also additional town-city district crossovers with this option in District 26, which would extend partway into the city of Cumberland, and Districts 21 and 24, which would be part in the town and part in the city of Rice Lake. Another example of this is in District 6, needed additional population, and the districts to the District 9 and 7 to the north and the west were conforming. So again, in order to add additional population, we would have to go to the east. To provide another option, I created option B to try to obtain less deviation from the ideal population, cleaner districts, and fewer municipal divisions. Again, there are notes, a spreadsheet, and maps in your packet. And I do have a correction on the notes for District 24. It actually needs more population, not less. So that was an error that somebody found for me. With District 2, or option B, I should say, 8 existing districts remain intact. Only 2 districts are above a 4% deviation. But again, several previously intact municipalities were divided, the town of Dallas and the town of Barron. The municipal crossover for District 16 was reduced from 3 towns to 2, and no additional town-city crossovers were created with this option as compared to the existing boundaries. This plan has several easier-to-follow boundaries. For instance, Districts 8 and 27 over in the town of Elmina now follow Highway 63 instead of jogging through the town. And the city of Rice Lake no longer has bump outs to just contain a few extra blocks to get enough population. It generally follows the streets more regularly. Either of these options appear to meet the statutory redistricting requirements, and I've had contact with several municipalities stating they would like to avoid any ward divisions, and I have tried to accommodate this to the best of my ability within these 2 configurations. I have had a town contact me asking for a district exclusive to their town, but we were unable to accommodate this due to lack of required population. And other than these contacts, I have not received any other comments or concerns during this process. Once the tentative supervisory district plan is chosen this evening, the county is required to notify any municipality which will be divided due to a supervisory district boundary. I will prepare this information and work closely with Deanne to distribute this to the municipalities. And I will be working with many of these municipalities to assist them through stage 2 duties and coordinate for entry into the YSLR system so the county can proceed with stage 3, which is adoption of the new supervisory district boundary. We will still try to complete stage 2 by October 18th. And I would end with the statement that I'm presenting this information on a mapping and statistical basis only, and I'm not advising the board in any way. It is your choice to choose either A or B.
Where did the preliminary estimates come from?
You know, those I believe were from the demographic office at the state, and they are quite off, unfortunately. I was sort of sad that those came out so soon before the census data, and that they didn't match as, as well. And I double checked the numbers, that we were provided with YSLR and through the spreadsheet that was available through the census, because, quite a few of them did look quite a bit off and hard to explain, but that's sort of what we were given to work with, unfortunately. So, anybody have any other questions?
Rhonda, I just have one question for you.
Sure.
Could you come over here 1 second and?
Sure.
Or I can come over there too. But we have an option A that you printed for me and an option B. And you blew them up big so I could read all the streets, which thank you very, very much.
Sure.
But now I see this one right here, but on this one here, the color changes up here, but is that still District 19?
The red is the old district boundary.
Okay.
And the colored area would be the new 19 would be in this aqua color here instead of the dark blue. So you would go out here instead of up this way.
Oh, okay, that's what I was curious.
The colors are the new boundaries.
Okay.
And the red lines are the old existing district boundaries on the mapping.
Okay.
Is there anybody out in the public that has any questions or comments?
Are we able to get copies of them?
It's on the website of the packet. Yeah, we're looking at, it's on the packet for the supervisors, it's on.
Yeah, if you get stuck, you can call and I can show you where they're at.
Okay, great, thank you.
There was one on the table out there.
Oh, was there some out there too?
Maybe they're gone now.
Any of the supervisors have any further questions or concerns? Okay, I guess we've got all the comments we need. We need a motion to close the public hearing.
Yes.
Motion by Supervisor Horstman, seconded by Supervisor Gores to close the public hearing. Any concerns relative to that? If not, all those in favor of closing the public hearing indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay,
I need a motion to reconvene the county board meeting.
motion by Supervisor Strano, second by Supervisor Heineke to
Reconvene the county board.
reconvene the county board meeting. Any concerns? Not, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed by the same sign? Yeah, motion's carried. Okay, on the item number 10 on our agenda for the regular county board meeting, and in Jeff's notes, Rhonda didn't recommend anything, but as you can see, Jeff recommended option B, because it allows for the tightest population variances, so that as we go into the future, over these next 10 years, we don't have going over the 5% variance.
I would move to adopt, option B as part of the temporary supervisory resolutions.
Seconded by Supervisor Hanson. First one, Supervisor Olson. Any concerns or questions about that? Not all those that opting for option B, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, covered. Future agenda items, Jeff in his packet had several items, and is there anything in addition to that, Jeff?
No.
Item number, is there anything else?
14.
That's 14.
Oh, sorry, at 14, we'll present the recommended published budget on October 18th. And I believe that we're going to have Alex Beaudry will be here in person to discuss our self-funded health plan, which ties into our, the budget. And I am going to be asking the county board, it's going to go to the property committee first. But if for these renovations for the electronics, we need to order the electronics for the upgrades to this room no later than the 18th of October, or we won't get them. They have to have the order placed that week, or we'll be facing another 25% increase, and we won't get them until spring. So that'll be the three things for sure.
Bill?
So we'll be meeting in the property committee first before the board.
Yep.
We're gonna do the first Monday.
First Monday on the 4th, I believe it is. Yep.
Anything else?
Did Carol have something? I thought she waved her hand. All right.
Okay, if we nothing else, by unanimous consent, we'll adjourn at 7:12. Thanks, everybody.